Hello, so today we're going to be talking about factoring by substitution. And this is not in your packet, so you are going to have to take out a piece of loose leaf, and I'm going to have you copy this down, what you see right here. So you have the title, the directions, and the problem. Okay, hit pause and do that, and then when you're done, you could hit play. Okay, so what they want us to do is they want us to rewrite this expression as a product of 4 linear factors. So in the end, we're going to wind up with 4 factors being multiplied together. All right, now, if you take a look at this, I'm going to tell you, please do not write what I'm about to show you, okay? So I'm going to emphasize this. Don't start writing yet. I'll tell you when to start writing. All right, but anyway, if I were to take a look at this, in my mind, the first thing I would probably do is I would probably say, all right, I have a square here, right? So let me write this out twice. So I'm going to write x squared plus 7x times x squared plus 7x. And again, you're not writing this yet. You're just going to watch for a minute. Okay, and then if I distribute the 2, it'll give me plus 2x squared plus 14x. And then I'll bring down the minus 80. Okay, now let's take this binomial and distribute it to the other binomial, right? So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times 7x is 7x cubed. 7x times x squared is again 7x cubed. And 7x times 7x is 49x squared. Sorry, 49x squared. And then I'll just bring down all of these terms. So I'll bring down the plus 2x squared, the plus 14x, and the minus 80. Okay, and then we combine our like terms. So this x to the 4th, there's nothing to combine it with, so let me bring that down. We know that 7x cubed plus 7x cubed is 14x cubed. Remember, when you combine like terms, the exponents don't change. You just add the numbers in front, right? So same thing here, 49x squared plus 2x squared would be 51x squared. All right, so this is a lot going on so far. And then I'm going to bring down the 14x and the minus 80. So the plus 14x minus 80. Now I have to say from this point, I'm kind of at a dead end because we have 5 terms. Right? If there's 5 terms, you can't group those evenly. So I'm kind of stuck at this point what to do. Okay, so unfortunately this didn't work out for me. So I need to come up with a plan B. And this is why I asked you not to write this, because guess what? I did all of this, and I wanted you to see that I did all of this. I wanted you to see, you could try it, but you are going to wind up at a dead end, and we have to come up with a different plan. Okay, so what I want you to notice, and I wanted to make us go through that because, trust me, some of us are going to see a problem like this, and you're going to go through that, and then I want you to remember, oh, wait, yes, we couldn't do that. Let's try something else. Now, if you notice, do you see how these binomials, see that in the parentheses, see how they say the same exact thing? When that happens, we're going to use something called substitution. We're going to bring a different variable other than x, other than the variable that's in the problem, into it. So you could use y, you can use u. I like to use a, so I'm going to let a, so I'm actually bringing a totally different variable into it. I'm going to put this off to the side here. Let a equal what I just underlined, the x squared plus 7x. I'm going to let a represent what they have in common right here. So let a equal x squared plus 7x. Now think about it. See how we see an x squared plus 7x? Can I replace that with an a? So I'm going to rewrite this as a squared plus 2 times a minus 80. Okay, so again, I'm going to rewrite that as a squared plus 2 times a minus 80. So all I did was I substituted anywhere I saw an x squared plus 7x with an a. Now the reason I did that is because look at this. This is a trinomial. We know how to factor this, right? We're going to set up 2 sets of parentheses. I'm going to put an a and an a. And then we just have to come up with 2 numbers that, add to 2 and multiply to negative 80. So let's say that would be positive 10 and negative 8. right? These two numbers multiply to negative 80, and they add to 2. Okay, but if you look at the directions, it says rewrite the expression as a product of 4 linear factors. So first of all, we only have 2 factors. And also, look, this has an a. Or these have a's, I should say. Our original problem doesn't. But isn't a equal to x squared plus 7x? So can I take those a's and rewrite them as what they originally were, the x squared plus 7x, right? And then I'll bring down this plus 10. And then same thing here. I'm going to replace this a with an x squared plus 7x. And I'm going to bring down the minus 8. Okay, so right now we have 2 factors, not 4, and these are quadratic, right? When you have an x squared, those are quadratic. So we need to rewrite these as linear factors. Okay, so let's do it. So here we have a trinomial where the leading coefficient is 1. So we know we set up 2 sets of parentheses. Since this is an x squared, we're going to put an x and an x. And let's come up with 2 numbers that add to 7 and multiply to 10. So 5 and 2. So we're going to have a positive 5 and a positive 2. Okay, and then here we need to factor this trinomial. So again, let's set up 2 sets of parentheses. Since this is an x squared, we can put an x and an x. And this time we have to come up with 2 numbers that add to 7, but multiply to negative 8. Okay, so if they multiply to a negative, they're going to have different signs. So one's positive and one's negative. And the 2 numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to positive 7 would be positive 8 and negative 1. So this is our final answer. Okay, we have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 linear factors. Okay, so let's try one more of these. Again, it says rewrite the expression as the product of 4 linear factors. Now that we know the deal with these, right? See how within the parentheses they say the same thing? And not only that, but look, this is set up like a trinomial. You have something squared minus a number times that same something plus a number at the end. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 terms, a trinomial. When that happens and they both say the same thing within the parentheses, that's where we use a let statement and bring a different variable into it. So I'm again going to use a, so let a, but you don't have to use a, you can use whatever you want. Let y, I think Delta Math might use y. Let a equal 2x squared minus 7x. Okay, so wherever we see the 2x squared minus 7x, right, we're going to replace it with an a. So we could rewrite this as a squared minus 13a plus 36. Okay, so let's factor this. This is a trinomial, right? So we're going to set up 2 sets of parentheses. Since this is an a squared, we're going to put an a and an a. And we need to come up with 2 numbers that add to negative 13 and that multiply to positive 36. So negative 9 and negative 4. Okay, and again, if you have trouble trying to find those, you can always off to the side. I just want to remind you, you can put this 36 here, right? If you have to in your calculator, you can type in 36 divided by x and go to the table of values, and you'll see the pairs of numbers that multiply to 36 are 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5 doesn't work, and 6 and 6, right? And then anything else, 7 doesn't work, 8 doesn't work, and then that brings us back to 9, which is on our list already. All right, now, so they multiply to a positive, and they add to a negative. So if they multiply to a positive, they have to have the same sign, but if they're adding to a negative, they must both be negative. So negative 1, negative 36, negative 2, negative 18, and so on. Now, out of these pairs of numbers, which ones add to negative 13? Well, this pair right here, negative 4 and negative 9. So we'll go minus 4 minus 9. But if you can do that in your head, which I'm hoping, you can, then you don't have to show any of this. This is only if you can't do what multiplies to 36 and adds to negative 13 in your head. All right, so now we're just going to go back, right? Because look, our original problem didn't have any a's. So we're going to go back and change these a's back to what they originally were, the 2x squared minus 7x. Okay, so this, I'm going to make it a 2x squared minus 7x. Right, I'm going to put a parenthesis in front of it and bring down the minus 4 and then close the parenthesis. Okay, same thing here. I'm going to take this a and replace it with 2x squared minus 7x. And then don't forget to bring down the minus 9. All right, now, we know we're not done, right? Because here we only have 2 factors. And these are called quadratic factors because when you have an x squared, that's a quadratic. We want 4 factors, and they're going to be linear, which means x to the first power. Now, this is a little different than the first one we did because here, when we're factoring a trinomial, but look, the leading coefficient is not a 1. So when it's not a 1, we're going to have to do factor by grouping. We bring down the first term. The reason I'm bringing it all the way over here is because we know we have to leave a big space before we bring down the minus 4. And the reason I leave a big space is because I have to come up with 2 numbers that multiply to the rainbow number. Okay, they're going to multiply to negative 8, and they're going to add to negative 7. Okay, so that's going to be negative 8 and positive 1. But remember, we put an x on these. So we're going to have a positive x or positive 1x, like that. Okay, so these 2 numbers, negative 8 and positive 1, multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 7. And now we can just group. All right, so out of the first 2 terms, I could pull out a 2x, which is going to leave me with x minus 4. And out of the last 2 terms, the only thing we could pull out is a positive 1. But please make sure you pull it out. And don't just write this. Don't just pull out a 1 and write x minus 4. You have to put a sign in front of that 1. So what did we pull out, a positive or a negative? We pulled out whatever sign was there, a positive. So we pulled out a positive 1. Don't forget that plus sign. Because now when we group these, we have 2x plus 1. And then times x minus 4. Okay, so now we have to do the same thing over here. We're going to have to factor this by grouping, right, using the rainbow. Because the number in front of the first term is something other than 1. That can't be factored out. So, I'm going to bring down this parenthesis. Let me bring down the 2x squared. I'm going to leave a big space, and then I'm going to bring down the minus 9. Okay, so this time we're coming up with 2 numbers that multiply to negative 18. Sorry, I'm putting it down there. So it multiplies to negative 18 and adds to 7. Okay, I'm sorry, adds to negative 7. Although I just kind of wrote over that. Let me just make that apparent. That's a negative 7. Okay, so it's going to be negative 9 and positive 2. All right, I'm actually going to put my positive 2 along with the x. Remember, if this middle term has an x, we have to have an x here. And then I'm going to put my negative 9 with my x. Doesn't matter what order you write them in. You wind up with the same answer in the end. But I know a lot of you guys like to group the 2's together and the 9's together, so I figured I would do it that way. All right, so here I'm going to, out of the first 2 terms, I could pull out a 2x, which leaves me with x plus 1. Now, out of the next 2 terms, you want to pull out a negative 9. The reason we're pulling out a negative is this starts with a negative, right? You always pull out whatever it starts with, so I'm pulling out a negative 9. So that's also going to leave me with x plus 1. Okay, so now we can group together what's in front of the common parentheses, so the 2x minus 9. Make that 2 a little better. There we go. And I'm going to rewrite the x plus 1. So this is my answer. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 factors, and they're all linear, which means x to the first power. If you were to graph them, they would graph to be a line. So there